Hey everyone, welcome to Just Start, the show where we cut through the noise and get straight to what actually works in Web3 entrepreneurship. I'm Rish from Boom Platform. Today is all about real strategies from real founders who built something amazing with next to nothing. No trust funds, no big investors writing checks, just hustle, creativity, and some really good smart decisions. Today, we're going to explore the topic of community building, that powerful yet often overlooked process that can transform disconnected individuals into thriving, supportive networks. While many aspire to create vibrant communities, successful community building requires intention, skill, and persistence rather than just good fortune. I'm super excited to introduce you to Jackbinswitch, the creator behind the Rue meme coin. Jack built Rue from concept to a thriving community with zero external funding, and even developed utility for the token by creating a Space Invaders game. He's going to share exactly how he did it, the marketing tactics that worked, how he built his community from scratch, and the specific steps that made the difference. So grab something to take a note with, because Jack is going to drop some serious alpha that you can put into action immediately. Jack, welcome to Just Start. So I'm going to just hit it up straight. Please tell us your background. What specifically inspired you to create Rue? Did you have any prior experience in crypto? And what gap in the market were you trying to fill?
Thanks, Rush, and you're my first favorite person in the space because you're my doppelganger. We look alike. I've been in this space since 2017. Is retail, right? Started out the way most people start out, and really just fell in love with it. And the part that I enjoyed the most was the community aspect. Once as you learn about the value proposition of say Bitcoin, some people might fully get it all at one time and just completely, okay, it makes sense. And some people, it's such a big education, it might take, some time to learn. But, getting involved in this and learning, it became very evident early on that being a part of a community of like-minded people not only helped accelerate my learning, but it was also a lot of fun, especially when you like things like, hey, what's this token doing? What's that token doing? What's the alpha? And so forth, right? So I started out as retail. I like to trade. I really like to speculate on these various technologies and all of their developments and what's coming. I like to look and try to see what's going to be the next big thing. But yeah, the I've been in Stacks since what 2022, and great community that stuck out immediately, and started posting a lot of content around the Stacks community. It was very, very early back in those days, you remember, and we met way back in the day, and that was kind of the beginning. And actual, love for the space has never subsided. And so when we did it, when we decided, by me, I mean my developer partner and I, when we decided we were going to build something, meme coins were really very popular. It was just about the height of their popularity. And if you've experimented with meme coins or done anything with meme coins before, you're already familiar with some of the downsides. There's plenty downsides. And what we wanted to do is make a token that didn't have those downsides. We wanted to try to get, if Plato had a perfect form for meme coins, we wanted to get as close to that as we could with Root. And that's what we're trying to do.
Specifically, what were the first thought process you had in terms of what were you going to focus on when building the community? Because I know when your content blog that you used to write about, it always captured attention, and I, for one, always read it. To be honest, I remember when I reached out to you and said like, "Hey, this new DeFi platform launching Vela," and you said, "Cool," and you interviewed me, Hale, and then wrote an article after that. And I found that super informative, the way you extract a lot of the information and share with the community. Now, with building Rue, I always struggle to find the balance in terms of how do you make it fun, yet make it fun is one aspect, I would say. The other aspect is to keep people attention there. It's extremely difficult. And Rue is a meme coin or a meme project per se. It's very hard to build content around it, at least from the outset that I've seen. How did you design it? I mean, what were your initial steps that you took? Like, okay, this is how I'm going to build my community. What did you do?
So the first thing to keep in mind is that in this space, it's as much a financial sector as it is a cultural center. right? Crypto has its own culture. This is evidenced by almost everyone now, even if they don't do anything with crypto, if they've never touched a crypto wallet, they know what Doge is, they know what a meme coin is. Like, crypto itself is cultural in nature, and it's been a subculture for a long time. So to understand, the community, you have to know the community, and to know the community, you have to have been a part of the community, right? So I think your first actionable step is, if you're a founder and you're new to this space, you want to surround yourself with the right kind of people who understand the space, or the right kind of person who understands the space and truly has like a love for it. And that's not always easy. There's more tools coming out nowadays that make that easier, with things like Kaito and wall chain and things like that. And then you have like Zero Authority DAO with, its reputation system and so forth. But historically, this hasn't been easy. But that's a part that a lot of people fumble on. They have a good idea, they have a good concept, they have a good business sense, but they get hooked up with the wrong people. And I mean, the most obvious example of that I can think of is when you saw celebrities launching meme coins last year, right? This is someone going up to a celebrity saying, "Hey, let me use your likeness to launch this meme coin. Everyone's going to make a lot of money." And then what happens? Disaster, right? So you have to know, that selection process is important. So it's necessary, and it's going to be necessary for quite some time, because this is not something you can go to university and study. This is all still so new that you're really going to learn it from the ground up. And if you don't have the patience or the time to just ground up learn, then you need proper advice from good, reputable people. And when we get to, launching Rue, so the first thing we did is, liquidity is extraordinarily important for a meme coin. Extraordinarily important. You'll see meme coins with valuations in the multiple millions of dollars, and they might have $100,000 worth of liquidity. And so what that creates is a instance where, if people make big sells, that price drops very, very fast, and people get scared and the meme coin dies, right? So we knew we wanted to make sure we had good distribution, which, when we talk about distribution in this context, we're saying you want people to, you don't want whales. You don't want one or two people who own the vast majority of the supply. So, and so we're like, okay, so we need liquidity, we need good distribution. How do we do that? So we ran a Twitter campaign and said, "Hey, I'm launching a token. If you want in, send your STX to this address. This is how much you're going to be able to get. And this is, this is the minimum, this is the maximum." And on the back end, Ian implemented some anti-whale measures so that people couldn't kind of game the system and wound up with outsized shares. If anyone wanted to become a whale in Rue, they were going to have to buy it on the secondary. And in addition to that, when launching, the other thing I did is I approached, in the Stacks ecosystem, people haven't been talking about NFTs for a while. The few artists that, people know, they might have like gone to ordinals or something. But we've had some great NFTs in that ecosystem, some great artists in that ecosystem. And so I went to artists that I knew, and I was like, "Look, we're launching a token. This is a great way to get your art and your name out in the space even more, because again, NFT artists, just like anything to do with crypto, so much of it has to do with attention. If you're like, we can use art for this, it can help get your name out in the space, get some more work out in the space, so forth." And we've had some people, jump on board on that. And so we immediately were able to also accompany our social media messaging campaigns and so forth with like cool memes and good art and, logos and pictures that are now kind of like iconic for the Root community. Most of this was made by artists who were NFT artists in the community, and some people ran with it really hard. GPSC, the Gigapeppy Spaceship Club, co-hosted The Organized. So he was one of the guys who really jumped on board with this, and that also helped give it legs. That also helped create another avenue of attention, and it helped capture, like, again, part of the cultural aspect of crypto, because art is also culture, right? And crypto has a very, very big stake in art, whether we realize it or not. Forget about market cycles. Half of the people, when they think of crypto, they will think of an NFT, right? They might not know what the tech is, but they associate the concept with art. So that was the very beginning, just wanting to make sure we addressed, some issues that would immediately be points of failure if they weren't done right. And then, how to message to the community and make it fun and get the attention and capture the mind share and also give artists like a buy-in, for themselves where they could use this as a platform for themselves. And by the way, these people were doing this for free. Now, over time, I've been able to show my gratitude by sending the different artists who helped some rue and so forth. But at first, there was no promises. We didn't know what was going to happen. Was kind of what the beginning looked like.
So, just to put on the thread of which nicely brings my next question around funding. How much does it actually cost or did cost you to build the initial version of Rue based from an NFT, from the community building aspect of it? What do you use? 10,000?
Oh no, absolutely nothing. Because what we did again, Ian Banksia, he's a developer, so he could do all of the tech. So we didn't have to worry about paying a dev or anything. Dev wanted to participate in the experiment with making a cool meme coin. So we had that covered, and all the liquidity we raised for the token that went straight into the liquidity pool at Velar. So there was no upfront cost in this respect. I mean, aside from like maybe minimal, like would it cost to deploy the initial contract, things like that. But I mean, this was not, this didn't really cost us anything.
So far what I've heard you share here is really interesting that one, find the right co-founder. Two, make it fair towards everybody the way you did in terms of the fair launch, which I want to drag more about it later, to be honest. And third, have a mind share with the community. Now, that brings me nicely to my third question, which is let's talk about how you communicate with your community. What was your day-to-day routine for engaging with the early Brew community, and which platforms did you use? Besides meme, what was the method to drive, not so much drive, to sustain the excitement? That is what I think I want to know more. Yeah, because right now, if I look at the meme market, there's hundreds. What would make Brew stand out in anybody's mind when they think about meme on stacks?
Right.
How did you do it?
No, that's a good question. And so when we launched, the Roo's over a year old now. So we launched, I believe, March 26, 2024. And at the time, STX was very well positioned in terms of price. We were around all time highs, and so you're going into the Bitcoin halving, and in addition to that, you also had a situation where STX was expecting a massive upgrade with the Nakamoto protocol. Now we know in retrospect that was delayed, and that didn't come through until like November or so. But what would happen shortly after launch is the market started its cooling off, right? Like we haven't been back at all time highs in the stacks ecosystem since. So we really, when we started, communication is key. So if you're going to take anything away at this stage, let me just emphasize communication is key, because the way we launched is, at the time we raised the US dollar equivalent of about $260,000 worth of STX to launch Rue from the community. And so that meant that you had a team of two guys that was holding that much money that belonged to other people, right? And then back then, for people who don't know, STX transactions used to have to follow Bitcoin transactions, right? And they also, the blockchain itself has been upgraded significantly since then. But when you had like a lot of high volume, you could slow the blockchain down to a crawl. It would take in our instance, it took almost a full day before everything was like ultimately processed. And then it's a matter of now you have to send everyone their tokens. You have to get liquidity, listed on Velar. So there was a 30 some odd hour period from the time that we took people's money until everything was listed. So communication was key. And then dealing with the right partners was super important. You talked about, you told me about Velar, and I was able to know about the project and get that information out well before launch. I knew the team there, and I knew their capabilities well enough to know that these are competent people. And if we're going to do this, we're going to do this with them. And they played such an important part and making that successful. And then the other part was constantly reaching out through Twitter to the newly formed community now of everything that was going on, because we like to say verify, don't trust, but believe me, when you're holding, $250,000 worth of other people's money, trust is quite important. And so being very transparent with updates and communicating, that played a big part in that. And from there, we had formed a community on console, which was, if people are familiar with Discord and Telegram as like the homes of crypto communities. Console was like a Discord type platform that was developed with crypto security in mind. And so it was for that reason we chose to launch with our community through Console. Sadly, Console is not in operation anymore, but again, wanting people to be secure, have a good community hub, and to be very active in the community hub, we chose Console. I think another thing for people to keep in mind is you need people in the community or your team who not only love this stuff, but can speak the language of the community itself, and who can communicate with the community and enjoy doing so. Because a lot of developers are very good at what they do, but they might not have the time or the inclination or the personality to be that person that is just steadily relaying information back to the community, right? So you need someone on your team who's capable of doing that. And
Sorry, how did you get hold of those initial evangelists in your team? Because to get people, and it's not difficult, to get really good people, to get ones with really gumption and staying power, that's difficult, especially since you are not remunerating them in any way. So, what was the script?
well, looks like one of the things that we've done in Rue is I operate under a thesis that this is a very early time to be in this space. As silly as that sounds, with Bitcoin trading at $105,000, the reality is, the way I believe is that I'll be an old man before we really start seeing this space, very mature where it needs to be, right? So I think we're very early. And with that in mind, I wanted the community to understand that, look, there's a lot to learn. This is a good place to learn. You have access to people who can teach you. Not only do you have the social aspect of the community, but you can learn a lot here. And just like the NFT artists could use their art to contribute to the success of Rue, you can find your talent and use it and practice and figure out what you're good at and help contribute to the success of Rue. Because in a community token setting, if you're giving value to the token and you hold the token, well, the token's giving value to you. It's its own built-in value loop. And then when you add to that, hey, this is almost like a boot camp where you can learn as much as you can about crypto because you like crypto and you want to do more in the space, you can do that. So again, take 300 artists. 300 has been around Stacks a long time. He started making music NFTs and this and that. And in the very early days, 300 was like, hey, I want to be the community lead for the Twitter account for Rue. And I'm like, all right, man. I'm like, I really don't, because I didn't take any team tokens. Ian didn't take any team tokens. I'm like, I don't really have much to pay you. I'll do what I can to compensate you for your time. But I can't make any promises. And so he recognized what I was saying, and he used that to further advance his own aspirations in the Stacks ecosystem, right? So early on, I developed the idea that we need to have a reputation system, because these are conversations that I had with the Zero Authority DAO guys going back years. You need a reputation system in this space that doesn't rely on your government name. that kind of relies on your own proof of work, right? And so they were working on that as well. So like the very, very old school community members all have this unique NFT that was issued like back in June 24. And as Zero Authority DAO continues to build out its stuff, it's building out its own reputation system. So we developed a way to start tracking reputation inside the community. So when that reputation system goes live here soon, people will be able to look at these different wallets and be like, oh wow, that guy, that's one of the people that, is done X, Y, and Z, not just in Rue, but in other places. Or wow, look at that holder. That guy's been holding Rue for a long time. Yeah, and this ties into things like airdrop metas and so forth, but we probably don't have time to get into. But the idea being that you can not only use this place to learn, you can not only have fun in this space, or you can just hold it and just see what happens, but take advantage of all of these different aspects of crypto. And as this technology levers up, we're going to make sure that people know that you were an important part of this community, and whatever benefits flow from that, you'll get that down the line as well, whether they be reputation badges, whether that becomes, because again, the way people do airdrops, the old way, that's not a good way. You already see people pivoting away from that. People, if you're going to airdrop something for a new protocol, you want people who aren't just going to farm your airdrops. And I think that people who have distinguished wallet addresses from being active in communities have as good a shot as anybody of being lined up for, the best airdrops and so forth. And we saw it playing out very early on, because shortly after Rue came about, that's when we started seeing the first bonding tokens on stacks come out via STX City. And sure enough, like, people who held Rue got so many different airdrops from all of these different projects, so you started seeing that play out quite early. And then the other thing that helped a lot is retention. Is we had, and we still do have, so much liquidity. Like, Velar created a program to incentivize its highest liquidity tokens to receive Velar tokens in the early days. And Rue was right up there. We were number 1, number 2, number 3 at the list for like forever. So our community members also, so then not only were getting airdrops, they were also receiving Velar tokens for holding, for staking at Velar. And then we baked some special surprises into the cake so that there'd be other incentives as they went along, which went along with this idea of, this is an experiment. We're so cool of you to be a part of this, and we appreciate you being here. So anything we do, we're going to make sure that our holders get in at the best way humanly possible. Whether it's free, whether it's airdrops, whether it's for the lowest cost, what have you, we want you to get as much out of this as you can. And that's what we've done.
Just recalling back, what made me get interested in Rue, that I had to get it back, was I remember the early days when the fair launch took place. And I think you were given an airdrop back in your wallet. And you just say like, hey, this just came into the wallet. I'm being transparent. We are not taking anything for free. We're going to either put it back in the pot, and even myself and Ian are going to buy in the open market. I think to me that was such a unique take that I was thinking like, this is insane if this works. But immediately I saw, at least for me, thinking like, this is going to work just because the trust is being built that this guy really wants to do right by the community. So that's the first thing. Then the interesting thing one I recall right now is that the Telegram page, every time somebody does a purchase, there's a Rue kangaroo with a rocket.
Right.
And this is that somebody bought it. And I remember there was a phase when everybody was excited when that announcement came out. And with a number of different, if you got 10 rockets, there's a whale coming in, buying in like 10,000, and I'm like, wow, this is insane. And I just think the messaging around that fun element of it was so strong that I wanted to get involved. Not so much in the price action, but in terms of everybody was so positive in that sense. And I was thinking like, what's actually capturing people there on that instance? I always struggled, well, actually with every meme coin, specifically with Rue. What was the underlying message of Rue anyway? Beyond the kangaroo.
Yeah, it's basically trying to build cool crypto for people who like crypto and remove that aspect of, you're going to get rugged. Now, macro be damned. You can't make any price predictions at any given time. There's too many things that influence that. But I knew that with Rue, the people that came in, they didn't have to worry about getting their money stolen from them, right? Because some people enjoy crypto. I'm one of those people. And to be able to go into something and not have to worry about being rugged, that was very important. And my ultimate goal for Rue is for it to be a completely decentralized, long lasting, just meme coin that exists, that it just takes on a life of its own. And so wanted to give it a good foundation, and especially at any time, because we still have things that we're working on. We want it to be fun, and when we make something, we want it to be different, we want it to be experimental. We want people who enjoy crypto to have like a great time with it. We sometimes call Rue like an amusement park for degens, right? And that's because, look, DeFi is awesome. DeFi is a suite of tools, but there's only so much you can do at DeFi. Some people, when they're in this space, they are much more, in it. And, we wanted something for those people who are just like the space and want to take essentially what is a leveraged trade on the underlying asset and see what happens, all while not having to worry about getting a rug pulled.
Okay, that statement you just meant that it's the playground for degens. At which point or at what point did the idea of building space invaders come on board? Because I don't think this is part of the initial plan, was it?
No, no, not at all. So again, and this is one of the benefits of having like a very technical co-founder, was that we had several things we wanted to try. And one of those things involved a whole new way of doing and it's for to make a different kind of protocol. And Ian pinged me on Discord one day. He's like, man, he's like, I can make a DMT NFT. I figured it out. And so, just to make it simple, your traditional NFT, the image itself doesn't live on the blockchain. A URL pointing to that image lives on the blockchain. And if you take like Bitcoin ordinals, for instance, well, those images actually live on Bitcoin. And then there's DMT ordinals that, the traits and everything, they're written in code. It's a completely different way to make the ordinals. And so there had been no DMT on Stacks. And Ian was like, look, we can make these we can make these DMT NFTs that live on the blockchain, and we can make them highly customizable. I think, I was like, dude, we have to do that. Like, forget about the protocol idea. This is fun. This is awesome. Right. In terms of the actual inspiration for the art itself, the Stacks Invaders, they that's kind of sentimental. Ian's got young daughters, and like they were just playing around with some pixel art and they came up with the design, right? So like, yeah, that looks like Space Invaders. Let's do those. And again, like getting back to the community, we're like, okay, you start telling people we're going to do this, and basically a DMT mint was going to be completely different than any other NFT mint they had ever done before. So back then, Stacks had on average 10-minute blocks. You could only mint one NFT per Stacks block. So we had to pick a starting block and an ending block. And for 24 hours a day, every Stacks block, someone would be able to mint one of these NFTs. And so we started out the entry price to get an invader at like one STX or a half a STX, and ultimately it ended at like 10 STX. And then the other part about it was people who had been in the community and they had X amount of tokens in their wallet. I can't remember how much. There was a snapshot, and those people were able to mint one for free. So we wanted to we wanted to be fun, we wanted it to be inexpensive, and we wanted to like reward our community for sticking with us. At this point, you're like in late June. A lot of people have checked out at this point, and we wound up making one of the most fun NFT mints in the history of crypto. Most people who didn't participate, they wouldn't know, but people who participated are like, that's the most fun NFT mint I ever did ever, because there were literally every block became a war. At certain, you had to develop strategies at certain times of day. You're like, okay, this is when I'm gonna try to mint my invader. And it was a blast. I know that like 32 STX right now, that's not like a lot of money when people think about, what that's worth when STX is trading at like 84 cents. But that's the floor price on Stacks Invaders today. And this is something that started out at, a half a STX or one STX or whatever. And so even if you were the last person to mint a Stacks Invader, you're holding an NFT that was minted in the summer of 2024 that's, over 3x more than you paid for it. No one else can say that in this ecosystem at this point, right? So again, you go back to, you want it to be fun, you want it to be fair. There was no gaming that system. That was a totally, and then we were able to do some fun stuff with the customization aspects, and we want to do some more fun stuff later. But that was really, again, comes from having a finger on the pulse of what it means to be a crypto native, because it becomes a lot easier to know what people are going to like to do because you're one of those people.
So now gets to the interesting part. What was your biggest obstacle then when you were doing the entire community building and development of not only the token but the utility side of it? And then if you could share actually how you overcome them.
I think the most difficult part is you're always subject to the macro price action. If Bitcoin's doing bad, most things, everything else is going to do bad. If you have something that, is not scammy and there's no way to like scam it, things will typically be down. So, timing, when you're doing things, you can try to time it at the right points, but that's not foolproof because nobody can really fully time the market, right? Like there's no one that just owns that. I guess you could say Warren Buffett's like the guy. But for the rest of us, we're mortals. We don't know when the best time to do things are. So, managing expectations. Sometimes in your community, you have people in crypto, like the old meme is win Lambo, win Moon, right? That kind of thing. And you have to explain, well, we can't really control what the macro is going to do or what this is going to do. All we, if you're in here and you like it and you like what you have, this is just where we're at right now, right? So, I think when people develop things, I don't want to call it managing expectations, but like just being able to communicate. And then, you'll always have people that, FUD just in general. We didn't have too much FUD with Rue or Invaders, but you might have people FUD in stacks or what have you. But that's something that you deal with, and some people just do that just because they like to do it. Some people, when their portfolio's doing bad, they take it out on everybody, right? Like, but in terms of challenges, it's just a matter of like whether or not you want to be here. And if you want to be here and you understand the space, it's never too challenging. You understand there's going to be low points and there's going to be high points, and you can see these points on a chart. There's going to be euphoria and there's going to be depression. So, um,
So
yeah, but
specifically then, Jack, what I'm trying to get at, one of the elements I want to focus on or home in here is that when a project launches, the initial hype is there, the project is fresh, everybody runs in, pumps the coin, pumps the project, but the initial euphoria just drops off for a while. Now, the point I want to find out from you, extract, was after the initial launch, after Space Invaders came out, how did you maintain that momentum till today? Even the market's down, I know for a fact that the Rue community is still going strong.
right. And that just comes down to maintaining, in our case, a strong social media presence. Since I'm also involved in deorganized media. My role with deorganized is typically just, I'm usually on the show as a guest. But from the early days of deorganized, I was like, we're gonna sponsor deorganized with Rue. So I would always take some Rue, whether it was to get a spot on the show, or where it is now where we have the find to earn games through Skullcoin. We sponsor contests. We recently sponsored a Zeely sprint through Zest Discord. Tomorrow there's going to be a Zest town hall, and we're going to utilize space drops to break off a little Rue and send it to the people with .btcs in their name. It's a matter of staying in the public and maintaining a presence. And like, for instance, having We didn't ever want to do a roadmap, because if we had done a roadmap, we wouldn't have gotten the cool stuff out of it that we have. But we knew that when we launched Invaders, well, a little bit before that, on the day of the halving, we etched a rune. We figured we'd want to have that for the community. We put like an Easter egg in the metadata of the Invaders so that people could get these runes. And, we have a Ordinals sequel collection that's coming up. Art's already been finished, and where it's going to be the Rude Defenders Bitcoin Ordinal collection as a sequel to the Stacks Invaders collection, and people are going to be able to use their runes to mint these ordinals. So it's also a matter of like what all are you doing? So if you have a roadmap, if you're a project with a roadmap, I would think that the way to do this is to just maintain that communication and be like, hey, Q2, we've got this coming out, and this is what it's going to look like, and this is the thing you have to look forward to with it, right? I suspect we're going to see a lot of that with like a lot of the established protocols on Stacks here soon, with like Zest and Bitflow and Stacking DAO and so forth, that have had all of this time to mature, and this is what you do. And then there's going to be here's what's next, here's like the token generation event or what have you. But I think that as anything you build here, because this space is so young, that there's always going to be something else to do. So, trying to stay on top of new metas. What does your community like? What does your community think about this? Ways to integrate. Like for a while, we were working with an AI team to make some AI Stacks Invaders with personalities. But by the time that was finished, and you look around today, everyone's kind of sick of that kind of AI bot, right? So it's like, well, okay, let's hold off and let's watch and let's see. But in the back of our minds, we're like, no, there's something here, and we want to take advantage of it, but we want to do so in such a way that it won't already be dead by the time it's complete. Right. So you have to understand the meta. You have to kind of see what's coming next and try to take advantage of it, because a Stacks Invader with a AI bot personality is not nearly as cool as like a Stacks Invader that can help you manage your trades in your wallet and so forth, right? And so maybe you want to go in that direction more. And you see the technology playing out and you're paying attention to that. So just understand that if you're going to build something cool here, build it because you would like it. You would like to use it. You understand the community, communicate effectively, try to pass as much value on to your community as humanly possible. I know that might not be the smartest thing to do in a business sense. I don't care. I just know that it helps give you an edge in a space where everything seems so extractive. I know for sure that like that has benefited Rue, this idea that anything we can do to like make the holders as much as possible, let's do that. And yeah, I think mixing those things together has helped establish this, and now Rue's on its way to being like that just decentralized meme coin that exists on Stacks. And I mean, I think we've got the second or third highest amount of liquidity out of any of the memes on Stacks. And as we get more users coming to the ecosystem, and you have more AI that's going to be doing people's trading for them, and looking at criteria beyond what some KOL is just hyping about on X, I think that Rue is very well positioned to become its own institution.
Jack, this has been absolutely great. Now, the last closing question I have. Looking at the current landscape right now, what specific opportunities do you see for Rue or anyone looking to build a community in this space? What are the opportunities that you think this is the right place to build, and what could potentially be built? That's one. And two, tell the audience where they can find you, find Ian, and find the Rue community.
I think that what I'm very excited about in general in the space, and have been for some time, is like things being built on Bitcoin. That was the initial draw to the Stacks community. And you'll relate to this more than anybody, after being in the middle of it for so long, and you're just like, it becomes just like, okay, this is just Stacks. But we're really now to the point where we're seeing, oh yeah, people have caught up to the idea. This is a mature ecosystem. This is about to get very interesting. Building on Bitcoin is massive. So I think that there's going to be a lot of different blockchains that have different opportunities. But I think that Bitcoin is establishing itself and it's kind of always been separate, but now it's like giga separate in terms of other crypto. And oh yeah, by these layer twos such as stacks, you can build on Bitcoin and make things on Bitcoin. So building on Bitcoin is huge. I'm massively fascinated with AI. I think that a lot of what we do as crypto natives are going to be abstracted away by AI. And like you have teams in the Stacks ecosystem now, like AI BTC, that are developing AI powered DAOs. Yeah, I just actually got off of space with those guys, and I'm got my brain spinning on how we might be able to work Rue into something like that. As that gets on mainnet. I think that AI is a massive meta in terms of building. I think that anything that decentralizes anything essential is important. Like, because when you get right down to it, that's the value proposition of Bitcoin. It's not number go up. It's the decentralized network and what it means to actually be able to do things in a peer-to-peer fashion. So I think if you use that as your starting point for what you want to build, I think that's as good of a starting point as possible. Because then you can think, oh, well, can I decentralize venture capital investing? Can I decentralize stable coins? Can I decentralize all of these things? That's how you get the coolest stuff built. In terms of, when Rue is at RueCoin on X. I'm at Jackbinswitch on X. Ian is at Ian Banksia on X. We've got a very active Telegram. We're constructing the Discord now since console shut down. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for builders here. But start with decentralization, because at the end of the day, that's what makes Bitcoin magical internet money. And so if you start with that value proposition, work from there and find what you want to do.
Jack, as always, thanks for giving me your time. I sincerely appreciate this,
Pleasure.
and I hope we can do the second round of this. I feel like I've only gotten 10% of the juice out of you in terms of what's possible on Rue or just a meme perspective building community, but more in regards to how you see the space evolving. So I'm sure there's going to be a round two. And thanks loads for your support for Boom. You've been great, and we'll catch up real soon.
Oh, man, it was a pleasure, Resh. I'm looking forward to it, and fun part's just starting.
All right, buddy. Peace out.